Atlanta has operated since the morning of the draft as if Michael Penix was the greatest quarterback of all time. That was the entire premise of the organization. We have to draft him, even though we gave Kirk Cousins $90 million. We have to draft him. And then we've got to start him as soon as Kirk Cousins was clearly not healthy last year. They gave him no runway. They bench him. And then, oh, by the way, people made this point, but part of the problem with the pick was that it wasn't Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers had a ton of capital in Green Bay. And I remember players talking about this. At that point in the draft, Kirk Cousins had never been really in the locker room to meet his teammates. He had no capital whatsoever. You're immediately undercutting him by Michael Penix. And then you trade your there are no protections in football, but you trade a first round.
Has anyone
pick.
tried, by the way, or is that? I
would assume somebody has tried. I would assume. I mean, you would just call it conditional, right? But you can't put the condition on your own. You do conditions like if we make the playoffs, kind of thing.
Makes the playoffs, right? Yeah, that's always the big one. Starts will be in there.
I would assume. I would assume you couldn't put a conditional based on your own team.
Cleveland would have already tried it.
Yeah, Cleveland would have tried
that.
When they did the salary dump. When they did the Brock Osweiler salary dump, yes, that's they definitely made a call at one point.
Although the kid in Jacksonville is like, we have a top 4, 12 to 16, 28 to 31 protected. Like, what the fuck?
Gladstone.
Yeah, because I think Daryl at one point tried to do like a reverse protection in the NBA, where it was like, if it fell within this window, we want you to get the pick. But I don't know. If the other team agreed. I don't know.
Could I hit you with a theory I just came up with? Is it possible that NBA GMs are like that because they really only make like 3 moves a year? And they've got all this time to cook up stuff like reverse protections. And NFL GMs, they're trying out long snappers like on a Monday. That's their Monday, is they're trying out long snappers. And I just feel like they're too busy to come up with reverse protections. Am I wrong?
I love it. Look, I can't. You're right, because the number of transactions throughout the course of a season for a football team, it's just. I mean, they'll be like, "Hey, we get a 2-way." Guys coming up from Maine. All right, so there's not that much. There's just not that many. Like, you might be watching a ton of stuff. I'm sure some of the guys are watching a ton. Although every now and then I'd be a little shocked. Like, I remember talking to a GM, this is a long time ago, but he had traded for a player. And I was like, oh my God, this guy hasn't watched him. Like, I would think if I'm potentially trading for a player, I would go, all right, fire up the tape decks, boys. Like, I'm going to watch the last 20 games of this guy, just to kind of see it was like a clear reputation only type of transaction. I think you're right on. I think there's so many things for NFL guys that they actually have to do that the NBA GM job probably gets super boring, because all they do is talk on the phone and try to figure out the value, the market for their team. That's why the most pointless breaking news thing ever is that teams are monitoring this situation or this team is taking calls. These guys it's all they do is call each other and try to get like a consensus of what the value is of the player. and then like when the team, and look, I'm not saying like every trade is a perfect reflection of what the market is, because clearly we had the Nico deal. We had the Pelicans who were like, fuck protections. Like, we want to make sure this 26 pick is gone so we can plan 26 on. Although Derek Queen, look, you'd expect a guy to be rough. I was one and done to start the season, but he's had an incredible last week. It still doesn't excuse not having any protections on a 26 pick. But when a trade is made and then, a bunch of people will be pissed and go, I can't believe that's the best they did for him. Be like, do you realize the thousands of hours they probably spent on the phone knowing exactly that this is the best that they can get for this guy?
It's funny because the Luka trade was an NFL trade. It was just like, this guy doesn't fit our culture anymore, and we're only going to call one team and then just get rid of the guy. That's it. We're just going to talk to one team. We're not going to do it. Like, I'm shocked. You mentioned Cleveland, but like, I'm shocked no team. Very rarely does anybody. I would operate like this as a GM, but I would also be a bad GM because I lack attention to detail. But I'm surprised there's more, like, Omar Khan doesn't just text 31 teams, be like, George Pickens is being traded at noon. Get an offer in. Like, it just doesn't work like that. Like, I just feel like, there's a bunch of instances where the outgoing calls thing, like that's one thing I've talked about with like Thomas Dimitroff, former Falcons GM. Like, you'd be surprised how many front offices, their phone just doesn't work. Like they don't make calls, or they only offer it to 3 teams, or they overthink it and they say, hey, we're not gonna we might play this team in the playoffs 4 years from now, so we're not going to call them. And it's like, just get the pick, guys. Just get the pick. I'm always surprised how conservative NFL teams are about not only trading, but also giving up like a second round pick, because you're looking at, on draft day, teams will trade draft capital for like the 67th pick. And then, some awesome second receivers available, and like, well, we couldn't give up the 67th pick. Why would we do that? No. And so like, I think that might be a little bit of an inefficiency, just trading picks for veterans, which we saw with the Rams a couple of years ago. So
once enough of the teams like in the NBA got smart about how valuable the picks in the first round, especially just a historic drop off in production, and don't argue the exceptions here. I'm not saying that you do, but everybody like, well, what about Draymond Green? But it's like, it's a significant drop off, like pick 10 and then on. And then it's like, if you ever get a guy that gets to a second contract, is actually a rotational guy in the 20s. So then the smart teams were like, yeah, these picks, it sounds cool. Like, hey, we got a first for Evan Fournier. And you're like, wow, like this, this is cool. Even that arguably at the time, you could be like, okay, that doesn't maybe make a ton of sense. And then the contract didn't work out for him. But my point is that the smarter teams started realizing like, we could get really burned if we're not healthy. See the Clippers right now. But, chances are if we're giving up 3 picks, it's like the Bain trade. Like Orlando looks at it going, we're likely going to be really good for a long time. And if we're giving up picks in the 20s, like we're giving up a 1 in 5 chance at a rotational guy. So what does it really matter? Like, why are like the headline of the first rounders is way overstating the actual value of the whole thing. And then when I look at the NFL part of it, like I always joked, and again, I'd be terrible at it too, because I just don't know the game well enough. But when I look at some of the trades, like that guy's awesome. Like he just made a Pro Bowl and he's going for a 3rd rounder because now he's on the wrong side of 28. It would be funny if a team is like, yeah, we're overhauling our defense and we're trading 2nd and 3rd round picks for all like, hey, how'd you guys find all these linebackers and guys at all 3 levels? You're like, well, we just traded 2nd and 3rd rounders because apparently they're all discounted. So
the Bain thing's interesting to me, and I don't want to do Magic Corner, but we can. But the Bain thing's interesting to me because Stan Van Gundy went on a rant about this, about the Rashard Lewis signing, 15 years ago now, where he said that he went on Le Batard. I think he was still a coach at this point, but he was like, we all look at these deals and we want to cosplay GM and we want to say this was bad value. But the problem is, when you're looking at it, is Rashard Lewis back then with Dwight Howard and Hito Turkoglu, he solved their problems. And Desmond Bain solves the Magic's problem. And you cannot put a price as a franchise on solving a problem that unlocks an extra round of playoffs, an extra 2 rounds of playoffs. Like Desmond Bain is the best catch and shoot 3-point shooter in basketball. And the Magic hadn't had a top 5 or top 15 offense since Dwight Howard left. And they hadn't had a top, they hadn't been a top shooting team since 2010 or whatever. Like there were so many things where the floor was just impossibly low. And you raise that and you solve the problem. Yeah, ceiling is the floor. But it was just crazy. And they overpaid. We solved the problem. You cannot put a price on it.
Well, for first rounders. So, whenever you're going, Luka went for this and Bain went for that. It's like, okay, if you want to do the thing that is incredibly unfair because it's technically accurate. But yeah, Bain in the history of all of these trades where it's involved all of these picks, like I can understand fans going like, well, how come you would have to do all of that stuff? But if you're Orlando, you're like, if this addresses our biggest single issue, which still it'd be nice if it addressed it a little bit more to the start of this season, as they've had
rounding into form.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm look, I love this Magic team. I'm holding out hope as well.